Hi, Chris McCoy. Welcome to Memphis Flyer Podcast. Look who I've got with me.
Toby Sells, also with the Memphis Flyer Podcast.
You have a fashionable hat on this morning,
Well,
Toby.
thank you very much. My my hair was just, it wouldn't do anything, so I just threw a hat on it. So here we go.
You know, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So this week, Toby's got the cover story for the Memphis Flyer. Tell them what it's about.
Back in the day, I was doing these stories, an occasional series called Whatever Happened To, right? And so we would write about, this was like 2015, 2014, back in the day, that we would get this announcement like, oh, we're going to build a bridge that's going to connect, the Green Line to Midtown. It's going to be incredible. We got all this like public funding and all that. And so then years would go by and I was like, whatever happened to that bridge we were going to do? So I would update the story, and inevitably it was like, well, we've got an environmental review, the money's not flowing right, something like that. But Chris, there were easily millions of dollars sitting around waiting for these projects to get done. Mm-hmm. So I took a lot of those and some other projects that I thought would be interesting to update, and I just kind of put them all together for Whatever Happened To the cover story.
Yeah. So what are some of the projects that you were looking at?
We updated I think the most interesting one on there is that Midtown Connector project, right? If you go to, you're on the Green Line, you're headed west, you get right there at Tillman, it ends, right?
Right.
And so right across the street, they even built a little sidewalk that goes into nothing over there.
See, I know where the sidewalk is, but I didn't know it went into nothing.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you cross Tillman, heading west, and it just ends up in like the forest over there. And so there's train tracks, an old rail line there, and so they were going to go build this bridge somehow over by the viaduct over there, Walnut Grove Union.
Yeah.
Somehow there, connect that down to Flicker Street, and so that was going to be like two parts of the project, right? And so then from Flicker, they are trying to figure out how to get it to connect up. So you would like come maybe East Parkway, that little rail bridge right there by Christian Brothers at Harbor right there.
Right.
Maybe that be another bridge to connect it to Cooper and all the bike lanes. They've got to Cooper, to Peabody, to MLK, to downtown. So it would connect the Green Line all the way from wherever it starts, all the way downtown into Arkansas.
Right.
So that's the plan.
Yeah, and I remember writing about that back in the aughts.
Yes.
And being all excited about it too.
Yeah. And so those are the type of projects, a lot of bike and pedestrian projects that I wrote about that, again, we were just like, whatever happened to that, And inevitably, and you can read the story for all the details, but most of them are hung up on these environmental reviews and a lot of red tape that these guys have to go through, which, it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's like these guys are really taking their time to make sure that they've got this right. There's one part of the Wolf River Greenway, that's another project that's in there, is they're trying to fill in the gaps and get this thing complete, right?
Right.
Which is another great project. But there's one that's going to be built kind of close to the levee, so they had to get with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
Thank you. And make sure that it's not going to mess up the levee, right? So they're doing it right, but it's just taking a long, long time,
Yeah.
So the cover art is the cobblestones. I don't know if anybody even knows that we're working on the cobblestones still.
I just remember like reading about the cobblestones in the 90s.
Yes. And so it's honestly been going on since the 90s. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So we've got Cobblestone Landing down there. If you've ever tried to walk on it, you just feel like a drunk, right? You're just like walking here and there and you're turning your ankle. It's the oldest cobblestone landing still in America, which is interesting enough. They wanted to make some kind of a way for folks to get down there, have a look at it, make it ADA compliant somehow. And so that idea started in the 90s because if you go down at the end of, I can't remember what street there, you'll see like a big, broad plaza they built right there. That was originally going to be the place for the Tom Lee statue. I found all this out looking back through history and stuff. I don't just know this stuff, right?
No, that's why we pay you the big bucks, Toby.
So Tom Lee was going to be right there, and then the city of Memphis just did it, right? Then the U.S. came in. They were like, dude, we can't do that. You can't go and just pull up all these cobblestones. So that started the project, and then it's been through environmental review. They had to check with TDOT because the trolley line is right there. They had to make sure that the sidewalks were wide enough, and so it was like a million things to get this thing done. But they say now it's 95% complete. I went down there. It's going to be kind of interesting, and they've got these long ramps to get you down there and little ways that you can actually go and view.
Right, I have seen that, yeah.
So, they're going to have a little plaza, looks like a little fountain down there. So they're saying maybe November, and that's the earliest of all the projects I wrote about that's going to get done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that only took 30 years. I mean, it sounds like a cool project to me, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm a history geek, so it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
But still,
Y-
30 years. When you hear about like people say that it's really difficult to build anything in America
Mhm.
anymore, I mean, I feel like that's part of that. Like what you're talking about is that's part of a larger phenomenon.
For sure, and for civic projects, for sure,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, as I was writing this thing, I'm thinking about Cobblestone Landing. I'm thinking about the Overton Park connector. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's taken so long, right? But then I think about the new Tom Lee Park. Would they get that in 4 or 5 years? 3
Yeah,
or
I
4
think
years?
it was like 4 years.
Right? And they completely changed that, and it is its own thing. It is connected to all these kind of things. But they got that done pretty quickly with a lot of outside money, private money. So I don't know what the difference is. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
there's a difference there.
and I will have to say that I was very skeptical and critical of the Tom Lee Park project, but I think it turned out really well.
Oh man, it's incredible down there.
Yeah, yeah.
And just the fact that my kids asked to go play down there from Midtown is a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, I'll talk about the Cooper Plaza Overton Park connector.
Let's do it.
Because that was the one I think that kind of sparked it all. Because I remember I use the park a lot and I ride my bike a lot. And if you've ever tried to cross Poplar right there on Cooper going into the park, Poplar right there is just it's the Wild West, right? People they run the light. You don't know what they're doing. I see people crossing like to go run or walk their dogs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, be careful. So the plan was right there they were going to like make all these new bike facilities and all that stuff. You'd cross over this really nice way to let cars know that there are people and bikes and dogs crossing right here. Then you would just hook up to this little sidewalk on the other side. Then you can gently make your way right, without having to walk through the golf course and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that was 2014 we wrote about that.
Yeah.
and so in the story, I took great care. 2014 makes sense in your mind, like, as a date. But then I added in there, like, that was the year that Joffrey Baratheon was killed on Game of Thrones or whatever it was, to kind of give you like a real marker as to how long these things have been going on. And
it's like you're in my head, Toby.
And so that project, there's a lot of that project that is done there. If you go right there, there are some sidewalks that have been built and all that kind of stuff. But they can't cross the finish line on that one. And again, they say it's red tape, environmental review, safety review, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but it's been around a while. I would love to see that done.
Yeah, I would love to see that done too.
Yeah.
I can certainly see the safety review on that one, for sure, because you're going across, Poplar, but still, there's people been fighting for bike lanes and for bike infrastructure in this town for a really long time, and it's just it's discouraging, honestly.
And something I was going to write a sidebar about if I didn't have enough words to get me to my word limit was that last weekend there was a walk for someone who was killed, a pedestrian that was killed called Williams Walk, and that was to bring eyeballs to the idea that Memphis is not safe for pedestrians or cyclists right now.
No,
one of the worst
not.
in the country, and that's data. That's not me saying it, right?
No, it is the worst in the country.
Yeah,
we have the worst pedestrian death rate in the country.
And at the same time, Steve Cohen announced there was some more money for like complete street projects here, and was lauding complete streets and what all that means. So this is it's. The story, whatever happened to, is more than just kind of a catchy, fun, like let's make fun of the government a little bit kind of a thing. I mean, these things are really supposed to help people in Memphis, and boy, I hope they do.
Yeah. One thing that you wrote about that did get done was was paving Peabody.
Right.
I live off of Peabody, and that was a big pain in my butt for a long time.
Oh my gosh.
That they did. Well, the other part of that though was they had to replace the water main.
That's right.
That was the oldest water main still in use in the city.
Oh my gosh, I forget. That just brought back the memory.
I know,
of
right?
That huge hole in the middle of Peabody.
Did I just give you PTSD?
It wasn't great there. I mean, It was a
No.
huge hole.
Yeah.
For a long, long time. And I had screen grabbed a view of the old Peabody. I mean, it looked like garbage.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. And I remember riding my bike, and you're just like all over the place. And then when they came through, they paved that. They got that done 2022. I think that had been around for like 4 or 5 years
That seems right. Yeah.
to pave the whole thing. And the pipeline was a pain in the butt. Probably could have gotten it done sooner. But when they got it done, I made sure I got my bike out there because they put the new bike lanes out there. That was a whole new thing. And so I mean, it was just smooth as butter until you got like down to a certain point. And I thought that was incredible. But as soon as they got Peabody done, Chris, I swear it was like 2 weeks. There was an MLGW truck out there, like just going out there and just
digging
a big old hole. I didn't know. I was like, no, we can't have anything nice in Memphis ever.
Well, yeah, the roads. Don't get me started on the roads.
Yeah,
man.
well,
it's been, especially since the last couple of like big winters.
Oh gosh,
It's just been horrible.
Unreal. Yeah, for sure.
Oh well, I was on my way to a Memphis magazine meeting a couple months ago, and I was on 240. I was coming back from the meeting, and I was on 240, and I had a pothole and blew out my tire, and ended up at the exit, the South Parkway exit, like changing a tire, like in this, like the this part of the exit, and I'm just like, I just got to stay focused. I can't get,
right.
If I any delay makes this more dangerous. I just got to get it done and get it done. I swear
Terrifying.
I had that sucker like jacked up, and I had the tire off, and I looked over to my left here just to glance over, and there was a gas station at the bottom of that ramp. If I just kept going down the ramp, I could have gone to the gas station. But as it is, here I am like that was terrifying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like to ride on the ramp, but
No, I don't either. No, I don't.
I've been doing these other series of stories called Minor Memphis Mysteries, and so if y'all have any of those, I'm solving the dumbest little stupid things. But I have heard people say that there is a fund of the city of Memphis that helps people if your car has been messed up by a pothole. Have you ever heard this?
No, I spent $350.
Exactly. I don't know if that's even a thing or not, or if you can sue the city and get your money back. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, please. I need to know that. But you just did another Minor Memphis Mystery too recently.
Right. Yeah. And so these are just the dumbest things. And again, I see something dumb on Reddit, and I'm like, yeah, why not? I've got a minute. People answer my emails, So let me see. Check this one. So the first one was Delaney Buffett was wearing an MUS Owls T-shirt in this movie. And people were like, why is she doing that? So I wrote the production company. They wrote me back, and they were like, nope, totally random, but nice to know.
We found it in a thrift store.
Yeah.
It's probably the actual answer.
Exactly. And so I just did one this week about the sexy screw, active bolt and screw down on South Main. You know what I'm
Yes,
talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking
So
about.
it's that screw. She's like winking, and she's like doing this. If you look, she's even got like a little nut, and that's her like hula skirt. Or
Right.
skirt thing,
I mean, I'm attracted to it. I'm not proud, but we need to like be forward about this stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. She was my first love in Memphis.
Yeah.
But I think I've driven past that because back when they got that building, like in the '80s, there was nothing down there, right? There was no, nowadays you go down there, Ghost River's down there, Laughlin Yard, there's people around, and so a lot of eyeballs are getting on this thing.
There's like thousands of people live down there now.
Yeah.
That's insane to me as somebody who's lived in Memphis for such a long time too.
Yeah.
That it's like that there's just so many people down there, and I just remember when it was an industrial hellscape.
Oh God, I mean it was spooky down there.
Yeah.
And these old crumbling warehouses and stuff. But
when I got here, I was like, I was told if you're on a street that's named after a city that's not Memphis, like Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
Like get out of there.
Yeah. Not great. And I think when I got here too, it was like you can go to Ernestine and Hazel's, but that's about it.
Yeah,
get out of the
get
rest
out of
it.
South Main. Yeah.
But so people now are seeing this sexy screw, and people are just like, why on earth is this screw sexy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wrote them up. I was like, hey, why is your screw so sexy? I wrote a very nice email, and I had a really great back and forth with
why is your screw so sexy?
Dave Colley. He's the grandson of the original owner and founder, Robert Colley, founded Active Bolt and Screw like in the 50s or whatever. And so the grandfather, his wife would do like the books at night and stuff, and her name is Betty. She's still around 90 years old. And so the grandfather said, Betty, would you make us a logo? And that's what she came up with, was this sexy screw.
Yeah.
And the grandson was laughing because I guess my email, he called her up and she thought it was hilarious that people thought the screw was sexy, and she was like, it might be eye catching, but I don't know about sexy. So the grandson told me that Betty said or thought that the screw might be kind of a self portrait because Betty always dressed to the nines, always liked being feminine and all that kind of stuff, you know.
I
And so,
loved that.
right? So like, there's a whole story. It wasn't just like somebody like found clip art and was like, boop, this is us now. You know, there's a story behind the sexy screw.
You can see the whole story about the sexy screw on memphisflyer.com. And of course, the physical copies,
Yep.
which whatever happened to is the cover this week. We love those physical copies.
Yep, absolutely. Go pick them up.
Yeah. But there's so much more in the paper. I wrote about Materialists, which is a new Celine Song film. And Celine Song did Past Lives, which was a Best Picture nominee in 2023.
Okay.
And I really liked it, that movie. And so I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like her second, film. She came up from like experimental theater. She once did a production of The Seagull, the Chekhov play,
Oh wow.
in Sims 4.
Okay.
So
Wow.
she's done a lot of weird stuff, out there stuff, and but this is it's a rom-com. It's a romantic comedy. That's what it's
Not
billed
what I
at.
thought you were heading with
It's
that.
a rom-com, but it's not funny. And I don't know. I watch it, I'm like, it was billed as a rom-com, but I'm not sure that that's what it was
Okay.
intended to be.
Okay.
It's got Dakota Johnson
Okay.
and Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans, Captain America.
Wow.
So it's got the Mandalorian and
Captain
America fighting for Dakota Johnson's love, and it is terrible. It's just, I was very disappointed.
Wow.
But the reason it's terrible, and I had this revelation about 3/4 of the way through, and I say this in the piece, is that Dakota Johnson is a bad actor.
Well, there you go.
Her dad is Don Johnson.
Oh.
Her mom is Melanie Griffith,
Oh man.
who was in like Something Wild in the
Yeah.
80s and was in a bunch of rom-coms. And I just kept thinking, and I was like, man, I don't mean this to sound harsh, but Melanie Griffith could have nailed this part. Dakota Johnson was just, so she's a matchmaker,
Okay.
right? Which is also weird in the 21st century in New York City, right?
Right.
She's a matchmaker, and she's just like completely cynical about love and dating and everything. And so in the beginning, she's sort of very monotone and low key. And it's like when you see her meeting with her clients, and I mean, you know this, you got your professional face.
Sure.
So she's got her professional face on, talking to the clients about their needs and about how they need someone to make them feel valuable. Right? Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then as the movie goes on, her facade is supposed to melt because she's like having to make an emotional choice between this Pedro Pascal, who's this rich guy,
Oh,
and
okay.
checks all her boxes,
Mhm.
but she's not really passionate about him. And Chris Evans, who's poor and a struggling actor who never quite made it,
Yeah.
but she loves him,
Wow. Well.
right? So that, but classic rom-com setup, right?
I was gonna say I think I've seen that movie a million times.
Yeah, exactly, right? But that's fine. You can like it's about the execution.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to do it well or not?
Yeah.
You know, everybody's got formulas that they have to. You either like, I'm going to follow the formula, or I'm self-consciously going to not follow the formula.
Sure.
Right. But so in the end of the movie, when she's supposed to be like emotional, there's just nothing there, man. She's just the same the whole way through. And I was like, oh my God. And there's this one part, my favorite part of the whole screening. I was there with my wife, who also loved Past Lives as well. I was there with LJ. And at that one point, Dakota Johnson is like having this big speech. And it's like, I only care about money. I'm a terrible person. And when she says I'm a terrible person, me and my wife both together went,
You
you
are.
are, in fact, a terrible person.
Man.
So,
well, folks, if you're going to read anything by Chris McCoy this year, if he hates a film, that's when Chris shines. I'm telling you, man. It's so great the way that you can really describe the inner workings of how bad you hate a film. It's so great. And I've watched you, read you for a lot of years, picking apart all the Marvel stuff and like how the studio has made these really terrible films. But something comes along every now and again that's especially bad. And Chris just like, I mean, you throw it on, son. You know, you just like,
Well, I have to be entertaining. You know, so the movie isn't, so I have to be entertaining.
love it, love
But
it.
anyways, pick up those physical copies. Over 300 boxes all over the metro. You can find one close to where you are, and go to memphisflyer.com. And Toby, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here, man.
Always love having you. And we will see you next week on the Memphis Flyer Podcast.